Good evening, folks. Welcome to a new edition of Curveball Convos with your boys at Carolina Curveball. Tonight, we have a good show, also a little bit of a sad show, because, boys, this is the last preview of the regular season. The season has flown by. It's been an absolute blast. Lots of highs, lots of lows, lots of baseball, lots of rain delays, and lots of sweet treats and hot dogs. It's been one hell of a season. But boys, we are here. I'm Casey Romali with Braxton reading Colby. Full cast tonight as we preview the last weekend of the college baseball season. Colby, how's it going, sir?
Yeah, good. Good to be back. I've been tied up with work a lot recently, so glad to make an appearance tonight for previewing our last regular season series. It's crazy.
I know. Reed Tobin, how's it going, sir?
Doing well. I'm looking forward to this weekend. Like I've said previous shows, these next few weeks, it's the best time of the year.
Braxton?
Yeah, could not be more excited. Like Reed said, best time of the year. I'm just looking forward to getting to Sunday this weekend because that's when things start to get real. We start looking at conference tournaments. Some have already even started, obviously. But I think it's going to be a lot easier to start making these field of 64s once we know, who's actually punched their ticket, and then you can kind of start placing teams based on that because it is hard to predict. I mean, we sit here and predict the winner of the tournament that we know nothing of, like most likely is not going to happen, right? Like crazy things happen in college baseball, and that's the beauty of it. So I'm just excited to see who all punches their ticket and what surprises we have. And yeah, I'm hopefully that we get a good last weekend as well here of the regular season. We've got some marquee matchups we'll talk about, but look, everyone's looking to finish strong.
Thank you, Brax, for that, because you just gave me a reminder. I just wrote down on my yellow notepad that I always write my notes on. We're going to do conference tournament picks and post that should we do that on Monday or Tuesday?
Probably Monday because I think most of them start on Tuesday the 19th.
Okay. It works. So,
we can just skip over Patriot League. Well, actually, we can just pick.
Yeah, it's
Is
just the
that
title.
Yeah, just the title game. So that's fine.
Yeah, I think they play a 3-game series this upcoming weekend.
You're right.
okay. So be on the lookout for that. And also be on the lookout next week for another Field of 64. But let's go ahead and get straight into it, everyone. We're going to talk about our projected Field of 64. This is our fourth one of the year. We're going to run through this for about 20-ish minutes or so. Reed and Braxton with me and Colby's antidotes. We're going to diagnose this, our thoughts, favorite regionals, matchups, their thought process through making this. And then to wrap up the show, we're going to preview the weekend, touch on some highlight series and conference movement. And with that being said, Reed Tobin, Mr. Field of 64 himself, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Kason. Me and Braxton were making this last night, and I mean, we just got stuck. I mean, these past few ones with the bubble, the state of the bubble right now, I think is the talking point that we've had with making some of our last Field of 64, just how bad the bubble is. I mean, I think this is probably the worst bubble we have seen in years, maybe ever. There's just not a lot of teams with good resumes in years past would have no chance of getting into the field. And then, this year with a lot of teams struggling, hovering around the bubble, you might find yourself in the field. But yeah, we'll dive into it. UCLA, I think they've all about locked up the number 1 overall seed, barring getting swept by Washington this weekend. I think incredible team. They're going to be one of arguably the clear-cut favorite to get to Omaha and win it all. And then looking at Missouri State too, I don't feel the best about them being a 2 seed. They were our number 32 overall seed. I think they could definitely play their way back down to a 3 seed. Or work their way up, depending what they do next week in the Conference USA tournament. There'll be plenty of opportunities out there next week. And then, Braxton, do you want to touch on the Atlanta Regional?
Yeah, this was another interesting one. We throw another Conference USA team in there as a 2, Jacksonville State, which I think would actually, we had some Georgia Tech fans in the comments of this post kind of thinking that would be a tougher draw for them. I mean, you know, I think you could see an SEC team go to Atlanta as well. I think that's very possible. But I know we've had Kentucky in there and in other ones, and then we threw Western in there too, which I think would be a tough 3 seed in there. I do think Western, if they play their cards right and obviously win the SoCon, I think they can be a 3 seed. Whereas if someone like Mercer would have won the SoCon, I think Western would probably be out in that case. But I think Mercer has a stronger case to be an at-large, which we have them as one of the last 4 in. But we sent them to Athens rather than Atlanta.
Especially with their win last night too, and then not to mention Jacksonville State completing the sweep against Auburn too last night.
Yeah, so I like this Atlanta regional. I think it would be a favorable draw, deservedly so, for Georgia Tech. They probably get out of there. I mean, dude, Georgia Tech is going to be tough to beat for anyone. That offense is just scary.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think this was also one of the harder things too, where to seed the 3 SEC teams of Texas, Georgia, and Auburn. All have great resumes. Obviously Georgia's already clinched the SEC regular season with 4.5 game lead. They've had a tremendous season. But the reason we don't have them as the number 3 overall seed is I think that 234 non-conference strength of schedule. I mean, that's got to play some factor. And then, not to mention they also got lucky with getting to play LSU, who's had a terrible year. And then, the other bottom dwellers in Missouri and South Carolina. I'm not taking anything away from Georgia or anything like that. I think they can easily win it all. But that's the reason why we do not have them at 3. And then, just looking at Texas and Auburn too, Texas won that series against Auburn. And then, obviously this weekend, there's the big one. Auburn plays Georgia this weekend. But, I'm just looking at Auburn's metrics right now. They're 13-13 in quad 1 games. And then they are 7-3 in quad 2 games. So that puts them at 20-16 in quad 1, quad 2. I mean, I personally don't think that warrants the number 3 overall seed, but we've seen with the committee what they did in years past, especially last year too, where the top 4 seeds were all from the SEC. Where me personally, I think they robbed UNC. UNC was the number 1 team in the country after the conference tournament, and then to rank 4 SEC teams ahead of them, I thought that was a bit unfair. And then looking at the Austin Regional, though, I mean, TCU, they're firmly on the bubble right now. They've got a big series this weekend. They can play their way off it. They play West Virginia this weekend.
Yeah, speaking of West Virginia, I love this Morgantown Regional, just pivoting to that because, I mean, it kind of makes geographical sense. Like, Morgantown is up there near Pittsburgh, but I think the state of West Virginia certainly is closer to some of these schools. Like Virginia Tech makes sense to go up there if they play their cards right. They're another bubble team. I think we had them. Were they last 4 in as well? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Coastal and Campbell, if they were both to go up there, West Virginia would have their hands full with both of those mid-major programs. Obviously, this isn't the case where Coastal's not a host, which I think they kind of played themselves out. We kind of all agreed that their recent losses to Old Dominion in a series, and then they should have lost the series to Georgia Southern as well. Yes, they had the really good, impressive outing against Carolina in the midweek, but they have not played as well. Fluky's been getting hit around a little bit, so they're kind of playing themselves out of a host right now. But I mean, if they're a 2 seed, they're still going to be really tough to beat. But we're talking about a team that a couple weeks ago was trying to build off of into a top 8, right? Like if they host a super, that's huge for them at their stadium. But I certainly think they could go to Morgantown in this case and win that regional. But West Virginia's been really hot as of late. So that one caught my eye just because we have 2 Carolina teams going there, and Virginia Tech and West Virginia is kind of a nice little rivalry too with the 2 states involved, West Virginia, Virginia.
Yeah, I mean, Coastal. I mean, for Coastal fans, I mean, the hosting chances aren't dead. Not yet. They got a big opportunity this weekend. Yeah, I mean, at Louisiana this weekend. I mean, that's going to be a really tough series. Louisiana's another one of those teams hovering right around the bubble. They have a good RPI. So, I mean, a series win there or even a sweep down there will help their RPI tremendously. And then, if they win the conference tournament next week, it'd be hard to argue against them not being a host. I was looking back last year, Southern Miss was a host, not winning the conference tournament, and they finished 19 in RPI.
They lost
so
to
that's
Coastal in the championship, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So that's certainly something to consider. Last year we saw the committee give the Sun Belt 2 hosts, and then with Campbell too, that'd be one of the tougher 4 seeds. I don't think they can work their way up to a 3. The CAA doesn't have a lot of teams high in RPI, and then certainly the loss to Bradley on Sunday did not help the cause. I mean, here I'll circle back and talk on the Eugene and Corvallis real quick, and we can just do them by pairs. We were torn on this one. Oregon as our last host right now. I think they're in a good spot. They were so close to beating UCLA last weekend. I was really impressed with them. So we did not move them even with the series loss. We did not move them off the host line. They're sitting at 20 in RPI right now. They play USC this weekend. I think that's probably a potential elimination for potential hosts. USC has the great RPI right now, but they don't have a single quad 1 win, which is just mind-boggling to me. And then, Santa Barbara, I mean, that would be arguably one of the toughest 3s in the field too, with Flora pitching Friday, or hell, I mean, they might try to save them banking they win that first game. And then, with Oregon State, they've got the great record and everything. Obviously, Dax Whitney, he's now out for the season, which is a shame. They're sitting at 41-11. They're in the independent now. They scheduled as hard as a schedule as they could, 61 strength of schedule. Some of these teams didn't pan out how they like to, but I mean, they play Air Force this weekend. That's only going to hurt their RPI. I would have a hard time seeing the committee move them off the host line, finishing 44-11 and being a top 10 team. So I don't think they can play their way into a top 8, but I think they're right there in that 14 to 16 range. Colby, do you want to touch on Chapel Hill and Starkville?
Yeah, one big question I have with Starkville, looking at that regional, obviously Wake Forest as a 2 in Starkville. How close do you have Wake to the hosting bubble? I know their metrics look pretty good. They're definitely top 20 in RPI. A big win last night at Liberty, and then played Duke this weekend. Say they sweep Duke. I think it's at Duke. They sweep at Duke and then win a couple games in Charlotte. How close are they to securing a potential host?
Yeah, me and Braxton, we went back and forth on that last night, running out Wake. They took care of business last night against Liberty. That was a great win for them. I think they got to sweep Duke this weekend, with Duke being so bad and everything. That puts them at 17-13 in the ACC. They're sitting at 16 in RPI right now. And then I think if they were to get to the ACC championship, I think that would firmly give them a host. Semifinals is probably pushing it. Obviously they would probably need to get some help with all these other bubble host teams like Nebraska, Oregon, USC. They would need them to lose some games too. But, if you're a Wake fan right now, I think you're in a really good situation. And
I would love to see them host just for the sake of the Carolinas, because, we're probably going to lose another host with Coastal dropping out. So if Wake were to get a second Carolinas host, that'd be huge, because right now it's looking like only Chapel Hill. I like that question, Colby, because they are right there, in my opinion. And I think this would be, a decent draw for if they're a 2 seed, they're gonna get a decent draw too, especially if they're like a top 2 seed per se, 17 to 23 ish range.
Yeah, I would agree on that. Did you want to touch on Carolina?
I like Carolina's draw here. I think he's a solid 2 seed, but I think if they can avoid an SEC team coming there, which the committee does like to put an SEC team there. I mean, last year it was Oklahoma, year before that it was LSU,
Georgia a few years ago too.
We've seen Arkansas in there, or maybe that was the Super, but I expect there to especially if they are not a top 3 or 4 seed, which I don't know why they wouldn't be. If they do that again this year, it'd be mind blowing. But maybe they don't. Maybe State beats them this weekend, and they don't play well in Charlotte. Then you might be looking at a 6 to 8 range. But I think Carolina is comfortably a top 4 seed right now, and they deserve a decent draw there. But High Point would certainly be a tough in-state matchup if they go on to win the Big South.
Yeah, I would agree on all that. I think Carolina could probably, I think they could play their way up to the number 2 seed. They win the series this weekend against NC State, and then say they go into Charlotte next weekend and beat Georgia Tech in the ACC championship. That would be 3 out of 4 against them. I would certainly think that would put them at the number 2 overall seed. Then moving on here, though, we'll touch. I already touched a little bit on Georgia. I certainly think Georgia can still play their way into the top 3. If they win next week in Hoover, that probably cancels out their terrible non-conference strength of schedule. And then, Mercer is a new team. We made this last night. Yeah, with a huge win over Georgia Tech last night, going into Atlanta and beating them. That's the marquee win they needed and everything. RPI is up to 34 now. Barring a disaster this weekend, if they take care, sweep this weekend, and get to the SoCon title next weekend, Braxton Colby, and lose to Western, I would certainly think they will probably hear their name called.
I think Monday. They need to get I think it's important for them to at least get to the final of that tournament. Yeah. If you lose to a Western or someone like that in the final, I think that's fine. Just with this marquee win they got last night, I think, especially with all the eyes on them too, right? Like that was such a huge statement win last night. Like they really boat raced them too, and Georgia Tech was coming back there at the end, but for them to close that out is pretty much, it was do or die for them. Like if they end up losing that game, I think then you have to win the tournament. But now they can play a little bit with house money. I think they're in a good spot.
So they're red hot too right now.
So Mercer has still a possibility of being an at-large, whereas Western Carolina doesn't. Western Carolina needs to win.
I would say that, but it's unfortunate because Western swept Mercer, right? But like it's just one of those things. Like Mercer has 40 wins, they have a good body of work. Again, all the eyes were on last night's game, and if Western's win over Georgia was this week, I think that there would be a little more recency bias towards them in this position, right? But I think there's just a lot. Like Mercer has really great metrics, and I mean you can't argue a 40-win season despite getting swept by Western, and they're going to want to beat Western in this tournament too. So like they're in a good spot.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Braxton. Looking at the Oxford Regional now, Ole Miss moves up. I think we had them at like 13 last week when we did this.
I think we had them as a 2, Reed.
Did we?
I can't remember. I think we had them as a 2 in Eugene, and we moved them to a host.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Well, they now move in to our hosting picture. With the big series win against Texas A&M last week. Take care of business this weekend, or just a couple wins in Hoover. They should all but have a host locked up. Kansas was them and Coastal were our biggest 2 fallers. Kansas was red hot. They had won 15 of 16 going into last week. 0-4 week. They lose to Creighton on the walk-off in the midweek, and then are swept at home in West Virginia. Their 4-game lead in the Big 12 is now cut down to 1. They play at BYU this weekend. I still think they can absolutely be a host. I think the Big 12. I think the committee's just going to have one Big 12 team. That's just my feeling. I think whoever wins the tournament, or the regular season winner between Kansas and West Virginia, will get it.
It'll be Kansas or West Virginia.
People have mentioned Oklahoma State too. They're red hot right now. Obviously, they would have to probably sweep this weekend and then win the Big 12 tournament. But yeah, moving on, Braxton, if you want to take Auburn and Tallahassee.
Yeah, we talked about Auburn a little bit earlier. Liberty. I think Auburn fans will be happy with this draw, like really happy. They wouldn't be happy that they're a 6 seed, but I think they'd be happy with these teams. It's going to depend on that. I think Liberty's kind of an interesting 3 seed there, but probably one that you'd be okay with. And then Tallahassee, there were some comments about this on the tweet too, like Florida State and Tennessee. You think back to that Omaha matchup a couple years ago. I think it was the opening round when there was some controversy with, was it Burke, who you remember that game, Reed? It was in Omaha. They played in Omaha, and I think it was the last out, and they said Burke didn't swing when in reality it would have been the last out, and Florida State would have won, and then Tennessee ended up.
Oh yeah, that was ridiculous.
So this would be kind of a fun little spot for that rematch. I didn't think about that at first, but the Twitter comments reminded me of that. And then Kent State would be a fun 3 there. So I mean, these two, I think they're fair for their seeds. I think Florida State, the injury story with Miles Bailey's kind of been the theme all year, but that's still a really well coached team, and they played really well without him. They're so talented. I mean, this was my national champion pick before the season started. Obviously, that's changed with the injury, but I mean, they're still, they're sitting at possibly the 11th best team in the country right now. Like, they're still going to be a really tough out when it comes to regional play, and I think this would be a decent draw for them as well.
And I think they can play their way up to a top 8 too. They finish well here. They make a good run in Charlotte next weekend. Their RPI is sitting at 7 right now. They're 17-10 in the ACC. 20 wins. That would be hard to ignore from the committee. Colby, I'll let you take the floor here for Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, obviously having stayed in at 13-14 in the ACC, obviously have a huge series this weekend at home hosting Carolina, who we have as the number 4 overall seed. Bait directly on the bubble for sure. What needs to happen? In my opinion, I was thinking one win against Carolina probably has them in. Obviously, a series win, I think they'd be a lock. But getting swept at home by Carolina, finishing 13-17 in the ACC, I think they certainly have work to do in Charlotte.
Braxton, do you want me to take it, or? I
mean, just real quick, I would agree with that. I mentioned it the other night. If they were to get swept, because right now they're sitting as the 9 seed, so they would get to play that extra game, which is almost kind of good for them in terms of getting maybe an extra win in Charlotte. But certainly they're going to want to win this series at home. I mean, that would definitely put them in. So I think if the case happens where you do get swept, you're definitely going to be, you're not going to get a bye in the ACC tournament, obviously. So at that point, you get a game to kind of recoup and win, and then maybe you get some traction from that and play well in Charlotte. Because if you do get swept, I think that you are going to have to play well. But with the bubble being so weak, I think State is fine right now, and and the other thing is playing Carolina isn't going to hurt your RPI as much as if you were playing a Duke this weekend or someone that's further down. Yeah. But State always plays Carolina really well too. I mean, that's the other thing to throw in here. They've got them at home. It's going to be ruckus crowds, and I can easily see them getting a game or even taking the series. So I think State is absolutely in a fine position. Definitely being that the bubble was weak though this year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I honestly, I think one win this weekend, and then one win in Charlotte next week is all they need to hear their name. We've mentioned with how weak the bubble is, I think that's more than enough. And then Colby, did you want to say something too about Virginia?
Yeah, kind of comparing and the reason why Virginia is safely in compared. I'll just go through it. Virginia and State are both 13-14 in ACC, one game below 500. Virginia is even 1-5 in their last 6 ACC games. But the reason UVA is safely in and State isn't goes back to non-conference strength of scheduling, which I mentioned earlier this year with when State schedule was released in our early shows, how it was a really weak schedule for State, which has been a constant issue over the past few years. Virginia's non-conference strength of schedule wasn't very high either. I mean, they're sitting at 111 non-conference strength of schedule, but State at 237. I mean, that just kills everything. Virginia is at 23 in RPI, safely in, not worrying about anything. Meanwhile, State is at 41 in RPI. I mean, sure, there's some results that skew it too, but a lot of it goes back to the non-conference strength of schedule and how you scheduled. So, um, I just going forward, it's been a problem last few years. I just really want state to schedule better, and it has been a constant issue. Whereas some years it's more of an issue for hosting bubble. This year it's for the actual bubble. So just going forward, they're pretty similar resumes in the ACC, similar records overall, but it all comes back to non-conference strength of schedule.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. And then, just touching a little more on Gainesville Regional, Florida sitting as their number 10 overall seed, number one strength of schedule in the country. If they win in Hoover, that would certainly catapult them to a top 8. And then, like Colby said, Virginia, I mean, they're sliding, they're reeling bad right now. Series loss to Cal this past weekend too. They're struggling to pitch the ball right now. They're not playing their best. So, I mean, they need to get it together here. They're firmly in and everything. The RPI is really high and everything. But, I mean, if you're a Who's fan, you're not liking what you're seeing right now. And then, moving on to our last two right here, we had a bit of a debate here too. Who was the last number 8 overall seed? And we settled on Southern Miss too. We touched on it. They're in second right now, just a game back from Coastal. Obviously Coastal plays at Louisiana. Southern Miss plays Georgia Southern this weekend, so I would expect them to sweep them. Obviously, that's going to hurt their RPI a little bit, but I mean, Southern Miss played one of the hardest non-conference strength of schedules in the country. And then, they have 21 quad 1 and quad 2 wins. I think that definitely can earn them a top 8. We've seen the committee give mid-majors top 8s before. Obviously, I think if they don't win the conference tournament next week, I think we're kind of predicting they will. They probably won't get that top 8, but I mean, if you're a Golden Eagles fan right now, I mean, you're feeling great about your hosting chances at the Pete again this year. And then, finishing it off here with College Station, where here I'll touch on Nebraska. I mean, Nebraska is another interesting one too. They're 14 in RPI right now. Second in the Big Ten. They had the really bad series loss, getting swept to Ohio State 2 weekends ago, but they recovered last weekend, swept Iowa. They play at Minnesota this weekend. I think if they get to the Big Ten title, it would beating USC or Oregon in that semifinal game would absolutely help their cause. I think USC, Oregon, and Nebraska are 3 teams just battling it out right now. Who's going to get a hosting spot between the 3 of them? So that will be really interesting to monitor here the next week and a half. And then, finishing it off, College Station too. A&M, they lost. We had them as a top 8 last week. They've kind of struggled here these past 2 weeks. They've hit the bulk of the meat of their schedule. Another team that did not play the best non-conference strength of schedule. But being in the SEC, you're going to get chances every weekend. They do have the marquee series win over Texas. So I mean, A&M, if you're an Aggies fan, I mean, they can certainly, obviously, I think I've touched on 3 or 4 SEC teams that could still play their way into a top 8 in Hoover next week. And then, go on.
No, I just want to say, I'm waiting on what 2 seed is going to play themselves into a host in one of these power.
It always happens.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. I could see it being Nebraska. I could see it being Wake. I could see it being an SEC team like Oklahoma, Arkansas, or
Oklahoma State.
Someone like that that's going to win their conference tournament and get hot. Like Reed said, it happens every year. So I'm excited to see what happens on next Saturday or whenever it is when all those conference tournaments.
A perfect example of that, Braxton, was 2022. Carolina was 15-15 in ACC play, and then they got hot in Charlotte, won the conference tournament, and then they went from not even being a predicted host to being the number 11 or number 10 overall national seed. So a lot of these teams can play, like you said, are going to have the ability to work their way up to being a host.
Also, some bid stealers potentially next week, obviously, to diminish the crappy bubble we have working with right now.
Yeah, I mean, looking at UTSA right there, with the bad series loss to Memphis this past weekend, for them, for example, if they don't win next weekend in Clearwater, it will be interesting. They'll fall right down into the bubble. Their RPIs in the 50s right now. So I mean, yeah, we went from just a week and a half ago having 3 American teams in our projected field to now just one. A lot of the American teams have suffered some bad series loss, and all their RPIs have plummeted. But they've still got a chance with the crappy bubble right now.
Yeah, real quick before we move on from this, let me just read off the last 4 in and the first 4 out that we had. The last 4 in, we had Mercer, Michigan, Miami, Ohio, and Virginia Tech. And then of the other bubble teams that we left out, the last 4, we have 2 Sun Belt teams, Texas State and Louisiana, and then Purdue and ECU. So those are teams that are right there on the bubble as well that were last 4 out. But just wanted to read that off because we don't put it on the graphic. But
yeah,
I think we're good.
Yeah, let's move on to this weekend.
Fantastic job, boys. And Reed, where can people find this?
Check it out on our Twitter. We just posted it today. So yeah, we'll have another one out on Sunday too before conference tournaments start, and then we'll have one final one before the selection show.
Yeah. Great work, boys. It is always a pleasure putting that together with you guys. It always does very, very well. Great discussion, Colby, Braxton, and Reed. Loved it very, very much. Now to preview the weekend. Some of these series mean a lot. Some of them mean absolutely nothing. Just going to straight up say it, kind of how it is, way conference standings are right now and conference tournaments are. But hey, these guys get one last chance to play their college career, so love that. Braxton, Elon, Northern Kentucky, and Upstate playing a little round robin. Is there another team in there?
It's just those 3, I believe.
Are they playing at Colby? Do you know if they're playing at the minor league park or is it at minor league park?
I can't remember when I did it.
Because I know, Upstate just beat Clemson on that field last night. I wonder if they're playing there again this weekend.
Yeah.
Who's the other team?
Northern Kentucky and Elon.
Harley Park.
That's the Upstate's regular field.
There's not a third team there. Oh, Upstate's there too, right?
Yeah.
It's just those 3. Elon only plays twice in this, and it's both on Thursday. Upstate and Northern Kentucky play Friday and Saturday after this. So Northern Kentucky and Upstate play 3 games. Elon just plays the 2, and they're both on Thursday tomorrow.
Okay, interesting.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir. Davidson at VCU this weekend.
That's big.
That might have some seed. Yeah. Davidson's a game. Yeah, Davidson's a game back for VCU right now. VCU sitting at 17-10. Richmond and VCU tied at 17-10, second and third in the conference. And then you got Davidson sitting right there at 16-11.
So keep an eye out for that one in the A10 tournament. Can someone take down St. Joe's? That will be the big one. North Carolina and Tobin.
No, I was just saying VCU beat them last weekend in the series.
Yes. North Carolina A&T at Monmouth. You got UNCG at Western Carolina with some SoCon implications here as seeding. Braxton, has there been any traction on what's the tiebreaker?
No, I haven't checked if it's like changed or anything. I mean, I would assume that it's just overall record based on what we've seen, but I mean,
which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, for those listening that don't remember, Western Carolina swept Mercer earlier this season, and Mercer and Western Carolina both sit at 12-6 in the SoCon. But on the SoCon website, Mercer is above them in the standings. And if you go to the tournament bracket, they're the 1 seed right now, which is just absolutely asinine. But Mercer is 40-13. Shout out to Mercer winning 40 games this year. That's huge. And then Western Carolina is 33-20. And don't look too far in the rearview mirror. Wofford at Sanford this weekend. Wofford sitting at 11-7. Who does Mercer play, Reed? You know?
Let's see. I'll tell you right now. What I just looked up, though, they play at ETSU. What I just looked up, tiebreaker goes by head-to-head. So I don't know if this is right, but
it should probably be Western then.
That's good.
So, yeah.
It'll work itself out this weekend. I'm calling it.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Western will sweep and Mercer will drop a game to ETSU, and that'll be that.
Let's go ahead and let's go ahead and get to this comment here because we love our comments. Quick question: do you think because State has a chance to sweep, do you think BC?
NC State. NC State for sure. To sweep Carolina, I'm gonna say no. To win the series, maybe with some Doak magic. I don't. It's not impossible. I think sweeping them seems impossible to me. What about you guys?
I think they definitely have a chance to win the series at home. They seem to always play Carolina pretty well every season, no matter what the two teams are having, like what kind of season they're having. I think you're right to the point that at some point, that pitching drop off is going to show, whereas Carolina has a lot more depth they can go to, on paper. But they certainly, State can hit the ball. So, I think they're going to have really good at bats all weekend against these arms. They have had some offensive skids this season too, but I think they certainly can hit the ball with Carolina, if not better than Carolina. So, Carolina's going to have to find ways to generate runs and kind of silence the crowd a little bit because they're going to be in it if it's a close game, the crowd that is. So I can definitely see State taking the series. A sweep would definitely be a statement, and obviously they'd be well in at that point. But I'm just excited. We're going to get a chance to see one of those games, the four of us. So I'm excited to be at the park for a big series.
Yeah, I think even winning the series, taking 2 out of 3, finishing at 15-15 in the ACC, and getting that last series win against Carolina, I think would have them pretty safely into. No need to sweat, probably.
Yeah, I would agree with both of y'all. And, just to a point, like Braxton was saying, State always plays Carolina well. I look at last year too. Carolina was top 5 in the country too on their home field, and they split. And then obviously we know that third game got rained out and everything like that. But State, at home, their biggest rival coming to town, absolutely they can win the series.
Got some Sunbelt standings conference seeding implications here. App State at Georgia State. App State sits at 16-11. Southern Miss 19-8. Coastal Carolina 20-7. Coastal could fall out of the 1 seed. They go to Louisiana this weekend to finish the season. Louisiana sitting at 14-13. The reason I say this because the team 1 game behind them in Southern Miss hosts Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern has 16 wins on the season. So that could be a potential Sunbelt shakeup there, Reed, for honestly the top from Troy, South Alabama, App State, Southern Miss, Coastal. We could see a whole bunch of different conference seeding combinations right there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if, let's say, Southern Miss sweeps and then, Coastal wins the series, which that would be a great series win. I touched on it a few minutes ago. Louisiana is a really good team. We've seen them beat some SEC teams in the midweeks this year already, but both teams, let's say, finish 22-8. They didn't play each other, so I'm not sure there'll be another one. I'm not sure what the Sunbelt scenario is for that. But Coastal, they're moving up Fluky in the rotation. If it was a normal weekend, he'd be pitching on Saturday. So we'll see if that makes a difference. That tells me they're gonna let him maybe ramp it up a little bit more this weekend and give him a higher pitch count, or maybe even take him off a pitch count.
Braxton, you got anything on the Sunbelt?
No, I would like to see App kind of finish the season strong. They've had some tough road series, right? Like they've had to go to Troy. Were they at Louisiana or were they at home last week?
No, I think that was at home.
Okay, well now they go on the road to Atlanta. Georgia State's been pretty solid, so I'm pulling for App in this league. I really want to see them kind of make a run at this thing and hopefully get hot and at least test Coastal or Southern Miss.
Campbell at UNC Wilmington. Campbell probably staying there for the next week or so because of the conference tournament being played at Brooks Field. Interesting one here. Campbell has locked up the 1 seed, locked up the conference, but hey, Wilmington can maybe get a few jabs in for the conference tournament. So we will be looking forward to that one. Not able to watch it, but we'll be box score monitoring. Moving to the Big South, you got Radford at Charleston Southern. Charleston Southern sitting at 12-9 in the conference. If Charleston Southern, let's say, sweeps Radford Braxton, they could maybe go up to that 2 line if Winthrop trips up this weekend versus Longwood.
Yeah, which potentially could be huge, right? Like you could give yourself an extra day of rest there, get a bye, save some arms, because that's what's let them down in the past. And I think even last year, did they have a bye last year as well? Weren't they the 2 seed?
Charleston Southern? I can look it up right now.
It was
Right.
High Point.
Oh yeah, they were. I think no.
I'm pretty sure Charleston Southern had a bye and still ran out of arms.
Charleston Southern was the 3 seed last year.
They upset High Point last year in the tournament.
That's what it was. Yeah, they upset High Point, who was the 1 seed, and then they were kind of in the driver's seat, but they ran out of arms. Like I think if they were to get a bye here, that could really help their case in terms of winning this tournament. So between them and Winthrop, if Winthrop does slip up against Longwood, which can definitely happen, I think it's important that Charleston Southern takes care of business here at home against Radford. They played really well against Longwood last week, so I think they should be confident here at home against Radford, another Virginia team coming to town.
Colby, Charlotte hosting Memphis. Is Charlotte playing some more baseball this week?
Yeah, they need to win this series to make sure they are. Got a good series win last weekend, so hopefully they're building off a little something. It's been a rough past 5 to 6 weeks for Charlotte, but good series win last weekend, and they need another one this weekend to make sure they're heading down to Florida.
Correct. Also got the Citadel at VMI, Clemson at Georgia, Clemson at Virginia Tech. Reed, this has major bubble implications here. Reed, just kind of give me your quick minute synopsis on this matchup.
Yeah, well, for Virginia Tech, they absolutely need to win this series. Especially losing a game to Greensboro last week and nearly losing that series. And then, like we said, though, Clemson now 9-18 in the ACC. Even if they were to go on and sweep Virginia Tech this weekend, that's not going to be enough. They have to win the conference tournament in Charlotte next week.
William & Mary at College of Charleston as well. Wake Forest at Duke. Colby, Wake Forest just needs to take care of business here and not have any slip-ups versus a struggling Duke team.
Yeah, like we talked about it earlier, Wake still with a chance to be a host, sneak in as a host, so really need to sweep this series at a struggling Duke team and then go into Charlotte and win a few more games and potentially get yourselves on that 15-16 line for Wake.
Presbyterian at Gardner-Webb, High Point at UNC Asheville, Stetson at Queens. Reed, does Queens knock them out again?
A beat at home. I'm gonna go Stetson. Oh, yeah. So I'm sticking with Stetson to get the revenge.
Braxton Longwood at Winthrop. Does your former coach secure that 2 seed?
Do they just need one? Do you know how many wins they would need?
So I'm a little perplexed by this. Okay. So Upstate's stuck in at 13 and 11.
Yeah,
so
they're done. Big South.
Yeah.
They're done with the Big South. And Winthrop beat them, correct?
Yeah, they swept.
Okay. So they're above them. So Charleston Southern. So they can't catch High Point, but they can
No.
drop below Charleston Southern for the 3 seed.
Right. So but I'm saying, how many games do they need to win to stay above Charleston Southern?
They're below them right now. Oh, are you talking about?
I'm talking about
Winthrop. Winthrop.
Winthrop's 1 game ahead of them right now.
Okay, so they just need to win the series, and I don't know what they did head to head against Charleston Southern, but yeah, I think they will get it done. I think they'll win 2 out of 3 here, maybe possibly have a chance to sweep. But Longwood, like we've been impressed with Longwood all year. They kind of didn't play well last week against Charleston Southern, but Winthrop's kind of been a weird team at times. They get a big midweek win though that we didn't really touch on. They beat South Carolina last night, which I know was kind of it's still a good win for that program, right? Like I know South Carolina's kind of the corpse, but they're the big program in the state, and to go there and beat them at Founders Park is always a big deal if you're Winthrop. So I certainly think they can take that with some momentum heading into the weekend, and they're going to want that bye in the tournament, right? Like they need to save some arms because that's another team that is going to run out of pitching if they have to play an extra game. So, and that's not to say they don't have good pitching. I think they have good starting pitching and will be able to compete in the tournament in Asheville. But they need to play well this weekend because you don't want to leave it up to Radford to beat Charleston Southern to make sure that you get that bye.
Yeah, and I just looked, Braxton. Winthrop did sweep Charleston Southern earlier in the season.
They would just need to win the series. If they win 1 game and Charleston Southern takes the series sweeps, then that would put Charleston Southern ahead.
Reed, East Carolina needs to get a series sweep and do some work in Clearwater to make the NCAA tournament. It is very bleak for the Pirates right now with the injuries that they have all over the mound. But it is definitely a path there. Can Ethan Norby lead the Pirates to the promised land?
Well, considering they have not won a road series in well over a year now, I don't think many of us are liking their chances this week, but they're in a situation exactly how they were last year. It's now just Ethan Norby and a really shaky bullpen. Not many arms left in that bullpen now. So I mean, they're going to need the offense to get hot and carry them on a run like they did last year. They can't be hanging their head right now. I mean, they're still sitting hovering right there on the bubble with the back-to-back series loss. But with their road record and everything this year, I have a hard time seeing them winning in Florida and Boca Raton this weekend.
It is going to be tough for sure. In the final series, South Carolina at Vanderbilt. Reed, South Carolina, I mean, honestly.
They're getting swept. Season's over. Don't even show up to Hoover next week.
Okay. Gallimore, who's the head coach of the Gamecocks in 3 weeks?
Kevin Schnall. We skipped over Coastal, and did we talk about Coastal?
I kind of already did. Yeah, I did twice. Yeah.
Colby, if you want to touch on NC State Carolina again, you can.
Yeah, I've been saying all show State needs to win 1 game this series, and I think that 1 game needs to come from the Consiglio start. I think he's your best option to get a win in this series. He's actually been pitching the ball very well recently. I know he had a shaky first inning at Stanford last weekend, but he really bounced back and finished strong. So I think if State wins a game this series, it needs to be from Cooper Consiglio.
What day is he going to start, do you think? You think it'll be Heath Andrews tomorrow night?
Yeah, I could see it going either way. I would guess Consiglio will be on the mound when we're there Friday night. That would be my guess. But
you think they keep Nance in the rotation too this weekend?
Well, he wasn't in the rotation last weekend.
It'd be Hemrick, right?
I thought he started Sunday. That Sunday game.
Andrews did.
He came in and just
he came in.
Okay.
That's why I was so upset because I thought they didn't bring him in on Friday night when State had a really good shot of winning up by a run in the 8th. But I thought they were holding him out because he was going to end up starting Sunday. But he didn't start Sunday, and he came out of the bullpen anyways.
Okay, gotcha.
That's why I was upset they didn't bring him in. If he was always going to come out of the bullpen, why didn't he come in on Friday night? And they would have secured the series most likely. But
Right.
yeah,
Boys, can't believe the regular season's over. It's gone by in a blink. It's been fun, but hey, the best time of year is now. Anyone have any closing comments as we close out a little earlier tonight?
BG, I'm just interested to see what the bubble teams do this weekend. I think that's what everyone's got their eyes on. I want to see Coastal and Wake take care of business this weekend to get themselves back into the hosting picture. And then I look forward to being with y'all at the game at the Doak on Friday. Should be a good time.
Yeah, Colby, what's going on this weekend, bro?
yeah. Friday we'll all be at the game. Sounds like maybe Sammy's pregame, maybe a little postgame activities for my 25th birthday. Getting old, getting up there. So
Welcome to the club.
Excited to be with all you guys on Friday. I'm looking forward to it.
Welcome to Unk Status, sir.
Yeah.
Braxton, where can people find all our stuff, sir?
Yeah, in our bio we have links to everything. Follow us on Instagram, X, YouTube, TikTok, where we got content over there. Maybe we'll do some TikToks on Friday with all the boys involved. Yeah, drop us a follow on all the above. We're trying to put out some good content here with postseason. This is the busiest time for us in terms of content, and we want it to be a memorable postseason. Hopefully, we get some success from Carolina's teams because that's what we love the most. So yeah, be on the lookout for all that stuff. Give us a follow.
Be on the lookout for sure. Lots of other fun stuff going on. NFL schedule released tomorrow. That's a big day for me. Looking forward to that one. PGA Tour this weekend, Reed. What tournaments this weekend?
All right, wrap it up. The second major.
Where is it being played?
Amber Rock, Pennsylvania.
Tobin, who's winning?
Scotty Scheffler.
Yep. All right. Good night, folks.
Yeah.
Everyone, we will see you. We will see you. Where will we see people next?
Monday, probably.
Maybe Sunday night.
Yeah, maybe Sunday.
Sunday or Monday. I mean,
Okay.
We'll talk about it, but
That works. You will see on Twitter. Be sure to follow us on our social media platforms. We have tons of content for you in the next couple of days. Folks, good night, and thank you for listening once again.